Whenever we talk about this question of state violence, we also have to talk about impunity and the failure of the state, because it is our main perpetrator as well as the one that continues to refuse to implement the rule of law. I think of it as the largest black human rights states in the world today, and I think that at the core of its violence is this vicious system of apartheid, which is the caste system. And I use the term apartheid because when we're talking about the experiences of my people, the untouchables, although we do not use that term, we call ourselves Dalit, one who has been broken by struggle but who is defined and refined by it. We see ourselves as a people who have struggled against one of the largest systems of oppression in the world. One of the things that we have to really deeply acknowledge in this room about India is now the largest fundamentalist country in the world. Except that we don't talk about Hindu fundamentalism because we're so obsessed about the Muslim fundamentalism that we're using to justify US imperialism. But we have other empires that are brewing. And when you look at India and we look at China, we see them as large imperialist forces that are now starting to take over the countries of Asia. And with the Hindu fundamentalism in India, you have the atrocities that have been honed on the bodies of Dalit women being used for other communities. Because women and gender non-conforming and trans people are always the canaries in the coal mine. So what we see with Dalit women, we see now with Muslim women, we see with Christian women. So much to the point that in last month alone, in this town of Ghaziabad, you had 2 men pull a Muslim woman out of her grave to rape her at the behest of one of the leading parties, the BJP's leader, who was encouraging people, we have to show these Muslims what they're about. We need to take their women and rape them even if they're dead. Because rape is always used as a tool in my country to be able to enforce the apartheid and control lines. So all of this violence is performative. You take Dalit women, you strip them naked in the square. You shave their heads, you set them on fire, you hang them from trees, because our bodies are the message in which caste is spread across. And so when we think about as a world, when we talk about the world that we want to build in, when we are part of a country whose companies are willingly doing business with a country like India, when we have Obama saying he thinks that the Prime Minister, and keep in mind, Prime Minister Narendra Modi oversaw the pogroms of over 2,000 Muslims killed when he was the governor of Gujarat, saying, I feel like he has a clear-headed vision for the country. I trust him. We have Mark Zuckerberg saying, Prime Minister Modi, he knows what to do to take our country out of poverty. And so for me, I feel like when I hear fundamentalism, I don't actually hear fundamentalism, I hear smokescreen for capital. And so the conversation in India, and where we as an American public really can engage in this conversation, is we have companies that we buy into that do business with India that allow it to continue caste apartheid. Facebook, Google, Adobe, all of the technology companies are going in and signing and endorsing this administration. So caste apartheid, which has continued to this point, will now continue into the digital sphere in an unprecedented level of surveillance, harassment, and disappearance of activists. So when we're talking about the world's largest democracy, does that fall into line with where you have even NGOs like the Ford Foundation being blacklisted? So for me, I deeply see that my survival is not just my own. It is linked with every single woman in this room, with every single person on the stream. Our resistance is linked. While we're deciding whether or not I should learn more about your struggle or your struggle or your struggle, capital is already making sure that our country's policies are engaging with each other.